replaying it later, don't I?
Okay. So before I introduce Martin, I just wanted to let you know how this came about. I've known Martin for approximately 18 months. We met at this club, and we got on pretty well. And one day I called him and said, I'd love to come along to your guest house and just have a look at it. And I think I was very taken aback by the project that he's started and that is ongoing. He's halfway through the development of the guest house, right? So this is actually even better for you that have turned up this evening, because you'll see the before and after, and if you ever get a chance to come in on the training day, you will see some of the rooms before and after. So he's halfway through that project. I went to see it, and he told me about the profit potential once the refurb is completed, and it's a minimum of 150,000. Okay, it'll actually be more than that, I think, and Martin will go into that. But it also cash flows at 10,000 to 12,000 per month, and I thought that was pretty good as well. It made me think of property investors that buy 30, 40, 50 properties, and their headache and problems, and especially if they're out of your area, the challenges that create. And I thought, wouldn't it be great, having seen what Martin does, to hear about just buying one property in one location where you didn't even have to manage it yourself. And that's what I came away with Martin's guest house, and thought, this is just a fantastic concept. And when we were here one night after we heard a speaker, and we looked at each other and thought, we should be doing this, didn't we?
We did.
And I thought, like, that is just, and so that, here we are. So that we then went to Kent Property Network. We pitched the idea just to test it almost. It got a great response from the people at that event. As I said, they gave us half the room, gave us the business card, and we ended up in the magazine. And we've now got 4 other speaking appointments, and it'll only just grow from being in the magazine and getting the message out there, essentially. So I want to thank you for coming and hearing the first presentation of the Greedy Property Investors. And I'm going to introduce Martin now. Martin is a serial entrepreneur. He's a property landlord. He has lots of properties in Watford. I'll let him tell you how many he's got. And he is, ladies and gentlemen, a greedy property investor.
I am a round of applause. Just to get a feel of the audience, how many, before I tell my journey into this greedy property investment, how many have got buy-to-lets here? How many have got HMOs? How many have got a guest house or a hotel? Oh, it's only me. Okay. So I'll just get on with my journey, how I got here. Weird is a small world. I was born in Hemel Hempstead, and here today is someone in Hemel Hempstead. I was born in Lays Road, which is in a council flat. It was a new town, had very ambitious parents, and in those days, many years ago, you couldn't quite get onto the property market like you could in the 70s and 80s. So they started off in a council flat, but their ambition was to get onto the property ladder. And my father was an insurance agent, and from a very early age, I was used to being on the back of his bike collecting money. That's how I liked money. I could see money transferring. It's probably only small change, but I was the little kid on the back of the bike and saw that. And I had a mother who was very, very good at accounting for him. And they soon got out of that council house because they had a strategy, which was buy the worst house in the street in the best location. Okay? Now that strategy still works today. It's one of the few that does, as long as you know what you're doing. Moving on, so I was used to being around properties where they buy them dilapidated, do them up every 2 years, sell them. So I was used to living in rubble and being pretty untidy for a lot of times. And then a tragedy struck my family. My father had been really struggling with his eyes, and he went to Moorfields Hospital and was told that he was going to go blind. and he had to give up the insurance agency. So the less, again, he was eternally optimistic. So I had learned another lesson there at that very early age, which was multiple income streams. We were taking in lots of different forms to make money just to survive, and that was the key. But he didn't give up, and what he did was I became his eyes. So I became a DIY expert about 8 years old because I knew how to drill, I knew how to measure up, to put things up. So it was quite an education. And one of the things that he taught me and he drummed into me was, as soon as you leave school, save for a deposit and get on that property ladder. Okay? So when I left school, I'd only got a couple of qualifications because I didn't actually like school that much. I was more interested in sport. But I left school with an ambition. I left school with wanting to make money, wanting to get a big house in the country with a swimming pool. I wanted to be a retailer with a lot of shops. And that was my ambition. Now, at 20 years old, I then followed my father's advice and I'd saved up. That house there, I purchased in 1977. Small terrace, was totally dilapidated. An old couple, and I think one had died, the last one had died in there, had lived in it for about 50 years. I negotiated it down from about 9,300 to 7,900. I was paid weekly, and I used to every night try and do it up. But by the end of the week, I'd run out of cash. So it took me about 18 months. That had an outside toilet, and I arrived there just with a sleeping bag and my auntie's sofa. Anyway, 2 years later, I can't remember what I spent on it, but in that era, I probably spent about £1,500. I sold it for £24,000. And I have never, in those days, I never ever refinanced. It just wasn't done. I'd just rather go short. It wasn't like what happened later. So from there, I bought the semi-detached house in suburbia. All these were good locations. Did the same thing. Redid it up exactly the same for 2 years. Then I bought this one on one of the Leases Estates, Cassabury in Watford. 63,000. This was my first contact direct with the vendor, and that's really important when you negotiate, to get direct with the vendor. And I negotiated that one down. It was very tired. It was a Miss Chapel MBE, and I got it for 63,000. 3 years later, after putting the fourth bedroom on and doing it up, I sold it for 187,000. So this was, I was achieving my goal. This one here on the far right is in Stockbroker Belt in Rickmansworth. I purchased for 265, negotiated down from 340. Today on Zoopla, that house is valued at £1,001,000. I looked it up today. So that's at 29 years old in equivalent. Now, some of you might say, well, you can't do that today. You can actually do it, but you need to have focus and that right strategy. Okay? Now, from there, that was a real problem. Anybody in this room remember that?
Yes.
The city boys were actually giving back the keys to their Ferraris. This was a major problem, because I had on that larger house, I think I had about 130k mortgage, but I had, at the same time, fulfilling my ambition, I formed a chain of 8 shops, 2 of which in Covent Garden. So I was doing pretty well, and I could actually, I had a wife, three children. I actually could weather that quite well, even though it was tough. And I had witnessed even people I knew, they would, there was even suicides in that era. This went on not just for 1 year, this went on for about 8 years. And it put a lot of people off purchasing property. And I have to say, for that period, I didn't buy anything. From being frantic, I didn't buy anything. So, to the outside world though, I was doing well. But with all these shops, I never thought this time that I was. There was always something troubling me. And what it was, now when I reflect back, I never knew at the time what was troubling me. I had 8 shops, 45 staff, and coming from one shop where everything was perfect, the hunger and greed I had at that particular time was my downfall, because I was only as strong as my weakest manager, okay? And as much as I'm a systems guy, whatever system I put it on, if someone really wants to beat it, they can. So I was doing well, but I was troubled by that. I knew that although people from the outside looking in were saying to me, you're doing fantastic, I wasn't. And there was something missing in my life. And so it was 1996, I actually had a life-changing experience. I don't know if anybody remembers the England World Cup of 1996, but I was it's July, is it June? July 1996, I was coming back on an aeroplane with a holiday, and an air stewardess handed me a Daily Mirror, which I wouldn't normally read. And I looked in it, and I was speed reading it, and inside it was 24-year-old to be a millionaire in 18 months. So I really just chucked it down and thought, oh yeah. I quickly picked it back up, and what it was, from this recession we had, they just started introducing buy-to-let mortgages. This lad, 24 in Birmingham, had purchased 4. His goal was to get another 4 and double up each year, 8 and 16. So I read it again, ripped it out, thought I'm going to do that, because I knew that's what I was missing. Because in retail, you're as strong as your last month. And if there's hot weather, football on, your Saturdays can be ruined, and there's so many outside factors that can go wrong. I thought, well, hold on, let's get a solid property portfolio on the back of it. So the strategy was quite simple. To form a property portfolio of £1 million and to just let it double every 7.2 years, which it had done since 1950. Okay? So that's exactly what I did. So I went out that very next week and I negotiated, that's my first HMO there. And again, another small world, that's number 57 Vicarage Road. I also own 31 Vicarage Road, and bizarrely, I've got a friend from Leatherhead who owns 35. To be in this, you've travelled from Leatherhead to here.
We're going to talk about the fence, you say?
Oh, do you know that's my worst one? Yeah, that's my worst one. But so we've got 3 in the street there in Vicarage Road. And if you catch Michael later, I recommended one of my key staff players to him, Deepak Luchman. Yes. That would create a smile on your face. We used to have those meetings in Bupa. So that was my first house. And although the cash flow was good, I paid about 80k for that in 1996. There was days when you could get the grants. So a lot of landlords had started to, they'd had a long run on it. And if they could get the grants, they didn't want all the extra fire eggs and everything like this. So I came in at a good time, but that's completely specced up, and I could get the money back via grant, albeit sort of 6 months later it took to get it back. So that was my start. Now, within 3 months, the increase at that time was great, because we just come out of the recession, and I learnt a word that they didn't teach me at school, which was called leverage. So that's exactly what I did. Leverage, 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 and I just went and bought more and more and more. And so there were HMOs or two-bed sort of Victorian houses, and just formed my portfolio on that, all in Watford. Okay, so it's a very simple strategy. Now this strategy does not, it doesn't work today. Okay, because it's just, when is it going to double? And I wasn't working for cash flow, and I had a massive income coming in from my shops. So in fact, on 1 or 2, what I did, I was using it like my own pension plan, and subbing some of them. I was robbing from the business or subbing from the business, and so I could really roll with this. And you know, we couldn't do that today. But those were exceptionally good times. But in those times also, I learned a lot. Not only just different regulations, but also I've got an Eastern Bloc workforce and maintenance. So, with the exception of the fence, Michael, I think you'll find my properties are probably better maintained than you. Be honest. Okay. And how did I acquire these properties? Well, from insider and good contacts built up through estate agents, auctions. I don't necessarily recommend auctions because today you don't always get the best bargains. Then you can still get a bargain, but it's about the supply and demand. That was my best leaflet. Used to just keep fly dropping. That's a different game because you have to know exactly another strategy to keep blanking it, and that's a separate topic on itself. But that particular one brought me in a lot of leads on the creative styles where people were motivated sellers, and I was certainly mid-2000s, I was getting cash back, taking people's properties off them. But that's how I acquired those properties. It's a bit slow. Okay, so I then, like everybody, marriage is split up. I met a new girlfriend and I didn't need to sell anything, I just leverage out my portfolio. This is, so I've got my 8 shops, my chain of shops. I suddenly got a big house with a swimming pool, so I kind of fulfilled that ambition. This particular one I purchased for $1,240,000. It wasn't as easy as that. That's in January 2006. It had been on the market for a little while. The owner of this property had put it up about 1.6 in the June previous of that year, and he hadn't really, he'd overpriced it for the market. I pitched some offers in through the estate agent, and they just got declined. So what I did one evening, because I really wanted this property, I just went and knocked on the door. And he invited me in, he and she invited me for a drink, and there is the cocktail bar there. Yeah, had a few cocktails, and we couldn't agree a deal. So I left it a few weeks, but I still wanted it. So by that time we swapped numbers, so I phoned him up and said, Max, can I come round again and have a chat with you? Anyway, I got in front of him and just said, look, this is all I can afford. I can afford no more than this. You know, and he gave me another cocktail for enough, and I said, if you don't, we just need to agree to part mates. So anyway, he agreed the price. And I think the day I moved in there, that was probably worth 1.4. It just needed to be 1.450. It just needed to be remarketed. Anyway, this is the one house I never refurbed. 6-bedroom properties, that's just some of the rooms. Sold it March 2011. Profit 610,000. Equity increased 49%, which wasn't bad. Had originally a $750,000 mortgage on it. And some of the stats during that time, I think the market wasn't good, but anybody who generally purchased in 2006 would have expected it in the southeast about a 6-8% increase, because although there's no experts really, because they all vary. Anyway, I had a $750,000 mortgage on it originally. I refinanced it a year later with an Icelandic bank with a $1 million mortgage on it. So the girlfriend I was with at the time, we were in it for 125k each. And when I went to sell it, I realised these guys were in trouble. So I called a meeting. And basically, I spanked the banker. Okay? So what I did, I spanked that banker. Because I don't mind bankers, really. So there's the new stats. I actually got a bank gift from. I told them that if I was going to sell it, and they were desperate to clear their books, I told them what I wanted, 150k off that mortgage. Anyway, they agreed to something, it came out 149,000. So that really changed it again. So I made in that period 61%, which is pretty good. And that's one of my best deals actually, without refurbing, because normally, you know, I'm coming from the strategy of worst house on the street, adding rooms. That was pretty good. But again, I'm not sure I could do that again, really. Okay. So anyway, I sold that, and I don't sell many houses. But I'd then gone back to Hertfordshire, where I had nowhere to live because all my houses were rented. And having, well, you'll vouch this, Michael, good old Watford, Watford is geographically perfect. Not many people these days want to live there. It's 20 minutes from Heathrow, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from Luton, 5 minutes from the M1, 17 minutes fast train to Euston. So I don't get any voids, and that's something I hate with voids. So I went back to Hertfordshire, really scratching my head, not knowing what to do. And in the meantime, I'd sold all my shops, and not for loads of money. I'm one of the lucky independents that could have gone bust, but I didn't. So I sold for a token, and I really had nothing to do but a pot of money. So going back to the systems, I looked at every finite detail in my property portfolio and re-systemised it, re-looked at it, and it's amazing what you can do. And that's like an extra glass of cash juice you get. And you can do this domestically as well. If you're frugal and know what you're doing, and cut down and ask yourself why you're doing anything, you'll find that you can produce more cash. And I've got 2-bedroom Victorian houses. I've made them into like mini HMO in Watford. Each time the tenant went out, I've changed them to divide them into 4. So okay, I have to pay the council tax and the utilities, but it adds about 300 or 400 extra cash flow per month. Excuse me, per building. So it's always wise to look at other options that you can do to make extra money. This is my old family house that I bought in 1999. It was a sleepy old bungalow, 3-bedroom. What I did in the training could take the lid off. I've now got 6 bedrooms. I've got in the loft there. I've got 2 beds and a bathroom and 2 staircases. There's actually 8 rooms in that property. I actually have my log cabin at the back there, where when I go to Hertfordshire, that's where I work from. Rents come in for that one, 4,450. Utilities 1,350. So there's a net cash flow of 3,100 without maintenance. But there's not much to go wrong in that particular property because we've done it right. RIP buy-to-let. Buy-to-let now today just doesn't excite me, okay? Because I cannot see how my original strategy of 7.2 years, this is going to double. We're in Brighton, and I come from Watford. These are solid areas. I'm not saying, I don't think they'd go down, but we're getting minimal increases. There's no underlying current increased property prices, even though sometimes the headlines say they are. There's no way, because they're not, the buy-to-let, the massive buy-to-let people are out of it, which was really a glorified first-time buyer. And first-time buyers are nervous. They cannot save the deposit. So I am very nervous of buy-to-let. I don't like it anymore as a strategy. It's not something I want to entertain, because when I went back to Hertfordshire, I was looking for new strategies, but I didn't want to chase too many rabbits. So I was only going to do anything that made it work and work big. And this is a typical Watford scenario of a buy-to-let. You're going to have to put 25% down. How exciting is that? Whichever way you look at it, repayment or interest only. To me, I don't know if anybody else in this room, are you excited by that? Not really. It's going to be hassle. It's not like the good old days where you could ride the surf, and I did. I've been around the block and I've ridden a lot of surf because the property prices went up naturally, even though I bought right. But that, to me, is going to be an extra long-term strategy. It's just not something I want to do. So what I did, I had to think of new strategies that I've looked at my criteria. And one of my criteria was that I thought I want to make about a minimum to make it worthwhile, because I had enough property, I had enough cash flow coming from in, to do 150k equity increase on any deal I did. Okay? And also I want and/or tasty cash flow. So there was 2 strategies that I thought. This is the first one. Here, Jay, this is good old Hemel Hempstead. This is Rickcroft Close. Okay? This is a semi-detached, horrible 1955s house with a corner plot, which I have achieved planning for to convert to 3 flats, 3 2-bedroom flats. Purchased for 165. And what's basically going to happen? There's going to be a wrap round here, come out here, it's going to wrap round in L shape to form 3 dwellings. To give you the figures, and this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, this will take 18 months to 2 years to do, and what that gives you, purchase 165, 9,000 fees in and architects, development costs 120, section 106, do you know what the section 106 is on? It's about 306k in, 3 2-bed flats, 155. So it gives you a profit of 159. You've got options here. You don't have to sell. You can keep the last one unencumbered and just get 900, 950 rent. I think that's roughly what we go for over there. That's again not for everybody. The other strategy, which is why you're here in Brighton, this is why I'm here in Brighton, all the way from Watford. Just before I get to that, you know, if you look at the Monopoly board we all played, what did we do? If you rent, it's a mugs game. If you buy, and you get houses, and then you put, it's not guest houses, it's a hotel in that game, isn't it? I remember running. You know, that's the way to be. These are one, and where I'm coming from, I'm going to come to in a moment with the guest house, it's an HMO with bells on, yeah. Okay? And if you look in the rich list, they're all linked, they're in retail or whatever internet, they've all got links in property. So what I'm saying here, although I don't like buy to let, property is the key foundation to keep, you know, keeps you strong. Right, this is the first guest house I bought in Brighton. The location is fantastic. Now we're now moving on to commercial lending. This is a totally different game when you go commercial. See everybody's getting their pens out. When you go commercial, it's different. When you look residential, you've got a mortgage broker, you've got a questionnaire, and they kind of handle that for you. Going commercial is a different game. It's a bit like your CV, you're going to be interviewed, and you need a business plan. And you don't get no money down in this game. You've got to put, you generally got to put at least 30% in. So there's, again, it's not for timid investors, okay? But because commercial lending's on its knees, there's a greater opportunity to purchase below market value. And with this one, it'd been on the market for a little while. And I had put a couple of bids in that the owners had rejected. And eventually I said to the agent, well, can I, I want to meet the owner, because I knew, once you can get in front of the vendor, you stand 10 times more chance of doing the deal. Mark my words, that is such a key. Just try and get to the vendor and build a rapport. Although in this case, I probably didn't build that much rapport with a lady. She was an experienced property investor from Kent and had a lot of HMOs. Anyway, we had a drink, coffee in Drake's with Drake. I don't know if anybody knows Drake's here, with the agent. And there's two sides when you go commercial, particularly in this. We're talking property and we're talking business. So people have a profit and loss, etc. So with this, you've got, as I say, you've got property value and then you've got a business value. Now this particular property was really, really run down, arguably one of the worst in this particular square that I was looking at. But also their business model was absolutely rubbish, and they were 101, 104 on TripAdvisor, and that says a lot, right? So when it came to negotiating, we were talking about property and we were still miles off. This was originally on the market for 695, and I wanted to purchase it for 500,000. So, and they were putting, so I got to the point, well, what do you put that property would only stack up at 500, which I got to agree on. but she wanted so much more. She wanted another 100,000 for the business. So I looked at her profit and loss, which she gave me, and like all guest houses, they were running it under the VAT threshold. They were cooking the books, if you know what that means. So I looked at it, and it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. So I literally just ripped it up like that in front of her eyes and said, how can I go to a bank with that, with finance? And that one thing collapsed her, because she knew I couldn't. It was a Mickey Mouse thing. So anyway, long story short, I got that for 500,000. Being an ex-retailer, I had great plans of retwisting what is a guest house. And I don't know if your imaginations of guest houses are. They're generally like husband and wife couples who are running them, who are tired, pissed off with each other, and doing the breakfast and things like this. So I came down with a retail spin on this. But I bought it 22nd of December 2011. That's the...
Oh, that's smoking.
Yeah, that's not good. And in fact, we got it. We got it jumped up within 5 months. We were 33. Today we're 35. Now, we really aren't as good as 35. But it's just the systems I put in and different things. We're punching way above our weight. It's embarrassing. Okay, but it's all about systems and procedures that you put into these things that are different. Okay, because what I did, everybody does things because generally in business, because that's the way it's done. I stripped everything out and then we put it back in under my format, and that's the key. And even down, sadly, I organise housekeepers how to clean, so I want it cleaned my way. Okay. So systems and procedures in any business is vital, but I like keeping it very, very simple. Work to me is a 4-letter word, and I'm sure it is to most people in here, so we don't want to create, extra work for ourselves. And Gary often quotes, how's your B&B going? The first thing I did was take out that second B. That is serious work, so we go to self-checkout. Okay? That's easy, so what we're going to do, if we want to, is check them in. Okay, and you can go automated check-in, auto-managed, but you exceed people's expectations. All right, so that's how I retwisted this.
So Martin, can you just confirm that you've taken out breakfast? Is that right?
I've taken out breakfast. That was the first move I did. I didn't say taking out the bed. that's the first move I did. That to me would have been a nightmare because I'd be useless at cooking breakfast. But not just that, organising chefs and things, and someone doesn't turn up. And I came down with my son, and I came down in my car. Obviously, I picked up the keys, and I'd organised 7 cleaners off Gumtree for this thing. So it was straight in, and we re-cleaned it twice. Unfortunately, my mother had taught me how to sew, so I sewed up the old curtains in between. So, and we just pieced it together, rejigged the linen, because we wanted to keep the cash flow there. Because this operation, I had to go through planning, and in Brighton, because it's grade 2 listed, this was not going to be a 2 or 3 month job. It took me 9 months to get the full planning and conservation agreement. So I had to run which was one of the most grottiest guest houses and get cash in, keep that cash flow. And cash flow is so important, as you know. All right? So that's how I did that. Here's some pictures before and after. The first stage of our refurb has now been undertaken. Stage 1 has been completed. Doesn't actually make my existing. There's 2 existing rooms. There's an existing room of a bed and the shower room. It actually looks better on here than what it is. But for those who have been there, I'm trying to think who's been. You've been there, Sean. You've been there, listen. Those rooms are pretty at the top. Are really grotty rooms. They are really, really grotty. But in this particular thing, we have to start at the bottom because it had a spine wall missing, so we redid the spine wall. We've put 3 new rooms in the lower floor, and They've all been interior designed by Linda over there, interior designer, and they're just about to be retweaked. But this is our model. We've reopened in full over the last 3 weeks, because what we're going to do for the summer is just test these. But once again, there's little tricks in there, way exceeding expectations, and these are really tasty rooms. That gives you some idea. So here's some sums. 2012, before refurbishment, we had 6 rooms. The average weekly we were getting per room, 445. The total monthly gross, 11,570. Net after discounting, because I said earlier, I hate voids. So we've got webmail. If I've got a room that isn't let, I can within 5 minutes have that on the channel websites, which are booking.com or late rooms reduced, to make sure we have a near on 100% occupancy. So cost of service per month, that's the repayment loan and housekeepers, linen, etc. And of course the channel websites, 7,100. So the profit running it, if I kept it the same, was 3,800 a month. Stage 1 just completed. We've got now introduced 3 new premier rooms in our lower floor. So total monthly gross has gone up. We're going to have to discount a bit more because they're a little bit more expensive. The cost of service per month has gone up as well because there's more to do there. So currently 6,500 a month. So again, we could stop there if we wanted to. That's not bad for one building. To give you an idea, we're going to be closing, as I said earlier, in September to complete the first, second and third floors. So that's what our current is. 2013, after refurbishing, we're going to have 9 rooms. The average weekly, once the whole project's done, will go up because we can push the rates up again. The total monthly gross will be 28,626. Net after discounting, again, we're going to have to discount a bit more because it's a bit more expensive. There will be that odd room over. The cost of service will go up, but the profit will be sitting somewhere in 11,500. So that's the cash flow. So whereas I tore that up, so I got that business for nothing. Okay, that business is worth something now. The property price, the other aspect of this, I purchased for 500. The fees in 25,000. The refurbishment cost 120. So it stood me in at 645. The net value is going to be 800. It's possibly, with the interior design we've got going on as well, possibly 850. But who knows? I'm not really looking to sell it. It doesn't really matter. But there'll be a minimum of 155 gain in that property. And cash flow 10 to 12 per month. That's why, Sean, we're called greedy property investors.
Okay, brilliant. Round of applause. Thank you.
Marty came up with the name. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and we'll see. It raises an eyebrow, doesn't it? And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create interest. Okay, so the purpose of being here is to essentially introduce you to a one-day training program. We've called it the Fast Track Training Day, and you can see here that it will help you generate £150,000 of instant equity post-refurbishment, and it will allow you to essentially generate 10 to 12,000 per month using the super cash flow system. Now, by the end of the day, you will know how to source, systemize, and manage or outsource the management of a guest house. And we've identified a number of places in the UK where Martin feels that this will be an exceptional system. Brighton, London, Bristol, and Manchester, just to name 4. But you'll be able to source your next below market value guest house in an ideal location using Martin's guerrilla negotiation techniques. Systemize and streamline your own guest house to minimize time waste and effort. Learn 5 different ways to exceed customers' expectations and dominate your local market. Martin, would you like to just explain exceeding customers' expectations? There's just one with the that I thought was great. Oh, you know, the tray.
Oh, the tray.
Yeah,
No. Because we don't do breakfast. The first thing I did was I just wanted to give them some. You've got to give people something. So what I designed was a tray with cereals, some orange and apple juice, some Kit Kats, and I think there was something else in it, and also free Wi-Fi. Put in those 2 things when you introduce someone to the room and say, by the way, the compliments of us is this. Oh, wow, but it's nothing really. And I've introduced a different thing for the premier rooms, which will show you obviously if anybody wants to come in.
Yeah, sure. So lots of great ideas, tips just to get you up in the what's it called? TripAdvisor. Yeah, there you go. How to use commercial finance in a secret way to beat your competition. We have our own commercial guy who's going to come in and speak to us on the training day about how to do that. He is really great. So how to make TripAdvisor your best friend and your competitor's #1 enemy, and to complete that agenda, how to source, systemize and maximize your cash flow the greedy property investor's way. So it's going to be intense day, it's going to be educational, and it will allow you to learn the skills of how to generate that amount of income and ongoing equity. The price, well, we're reducing, there's a lot of value here. We thought 1% of the annual cash flow will be about, we think, where we pitch it at. But we're reducing it for people that come to our events and hear our presentation. So it's reduced from 1,295 to 995. And we want to incentivize to bring your partner or your business partner or someone else you team up with if you wanted to, at 495. It is the fast track 1-day training program. We're only looking for 12 people per training day. And just to make a note, the training dates are the 22nd of June, so that's later this month, and the 13th of July. And there'll be 2 training dates per month. We have forms for those that want to secure a deposit. We're looking for a deposit £250 to secure your seat. And the event will be held at Martin's Churchill Guest House. And that's just fantastic because you'll be able to see, touch it, feel it, smell it, you'll be able to have a walk around. We're going to show you the whole system, the old rooms, the new rooms. It'll be an intense, educational and very productive day for those that come along. And these are strategies and ideas that you'll have with you for the rest of your life. That's what's great about training, is that it's not just about a few months. You'll have this knowledge, for the rest of your life. It does require serious people. It requires people with cash or access to cash. You may not be in that position today, and that's fine. You may look at this and think, well, maybe that's something I could do in the future, and that's okay too. You may know people with cash. You may want to introduce us to those people, and that's okay, and we can talk about that. Okay, so I'll give you the dates. We do have forms, so you can speak to us. We're going to be here for all night, but for now, is there any questions? Liz?
You mentioned that you had to separate the business from the property, and in that instance you had very good substantial evidence to do that.
Yeah.
What about where, because when you're selling a business you are selling goodwill and that has a value. How would you tackle that if you had to pay, a seller might want to keep that value there?
That's true, but I only tend to buy the businesses that are really run down.
Right.
and I like to buy at the very bottom. But if someone's, there might be a happy medium, but you don't. You've got to be very careful.
Yeah.
If you were to buy whatever was the number one hotel in Brighton, which is Una, say, you'd be paying a premium for that business,
really
an absolute premium. Now, what happens if there could be factors there, but that's the number one. I don't know what those factors are. I've never looked into it. But say suddenly you buy it and you pay market value, and that slips down to number 10. Your equity's going to
free boost.
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I always buy something because I'm confident I can bring it up, because I've started loads of small businesses from scratch. So to buy number one has a zero appeal to me.
So that brings me on to my next question, and I speak from experience because a couple of years ago, before I was even doing all this, I actually went to look at guest house in Kent Town. What I didn't realise back then was what was for sale was a lease. It wasn't actually the property, but I didn't know that till I got there and started digging around. He was doing exactly what you've described. He was cooking the books. It was all cash. There was nothing there that I could go and get commercial finance on. And actually, when I realised what was on offer and it wasn't the bricks and mortar, etc., I didn't go for it. But his interesting USP was he was the only property in Brighton, guest house, where you could smoke. That was his USP. Consequently, like your situation, that goodwill I wouldn't have wanted anyway.
But I wouldn't be interested in something that was lease.
No, but I was just concentrating on the point that when you're buying something that's got a bad rep, I didn't realise that had such a bad rep that you bought 104 of 104. 104. So my question was a concern around buying something that's got a rock bottom reputation.
It can go up.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and you just have to ride that initially.
Yeah, but you're getting it for nothing. The key is to get the business. Commercial's not like you've got to get the business for nothing. You've also be confident of what you're going to do. And I was very confident that I couldn't lose. I knew I could do that. But because also, having done that retail where I had 45 staff in all those shops, as much as I really enjoyed those days, not my words, I had a great time, it's a nightmare to me now. And I thought if I could do that, to run something, this is the easiest business. And I mean, don't get me wrong, every business has got, there's nothing's perfect. This is the easiest thing I've ever done, because I've had that nightmare. But you've got to buy the business content for practically zero and improve it, because there's in commercial, there's two extra valuations. Property. See, property, as I said, property, because that was dilapidated, and because I can do it, that value's going up alone without that business.
So what I was considering at the time with this building was changing the name. But I noticed you didn't change the name. You kept with Churchill, even with its bad rep, under new management and all your systems and processes. You weren't interested in changing the name to get rid of that.
No, in fact, I could change the name, and I might well do that. But that didn't worry me either. I just knew that would sound just. That got to number 33. In fact, I think it actually got to 28 in May. But the problem is, running is still rubbish, basically. To run that, you're then going to, people are coming there thinking, 28 out of 104 must be pretty good. And we had somebody from the north who was used to, Saturday rate was 90 quid. They were expecting a 4-star hotel for that, and he walked in and walked out. So you've got to be careful about how much you push it up. I mean, when we will, once this is finished, if I don't get in the top 5, I would be really surprised. But I don't just work for TripAdvisor, because at the end of the day, the first thing I work for is profit. So I'd rather be number 15 and more profitable. But I think my ego wants that to get in the top 5, if not number 1, just to see if I can do it.
I've got one more question. Sorry, guys. This is really interesting. The other thing is that in that Russell Square there was somebody died in the
next
house.
building.
Yeah. So again, another question is there are other HMOs and some scruffier properties. Does that concern you at all in terms of your guest experience? So when they step into your place, it's gorgeous, but does it concern you at all?
That's been bought out actually, although they're taking their time. Russell, that particular square is going to come up. No, not really, because I mean.
Have you ever had any feedback at all?
No. We've got to be careful. I mean,
how do you go about attracting paying customers when you're only offering them a B and not a B&B?
Because in certain areas, there's so many other places. A lot of people don't want to eat it.
It's only about 30 odd quid a night or something, isn't it?
No. I
You entry
punted.
level rate.
I punted a few, didn't I? No, but the cheapest, unless I discount it, was like 55 quid. But I do discount and make sure that occupancy. It's certainly in Brighton and London, not everybody wants it there.
No, it gets
Okay,
big for breakfast.
and now it's even getting more automated for rooms. A lot of them are self-checking. You go to Berlin and places like this. Not a problem. If someone wants a hotel, Gary, they'll want a hotel. And not everybody does.
It's stated clearly up front
Yeah,
that breakfast is not served.
Especially not clubbers as well, they don't want breakfast
No.
anyway.
No.
So it's
Okay, so do you know what?
I'm
People
actually-
don't want to talk. People don't want to talk to you. If they've got a hangover, all they want to do is drop the keys and give the keys.
How much personal involvement do you have in the day-to-day running? I mean, who does the check-ins? Who?
Ash, my son, and we got it's
you've got to
all
have
system.
staff.
No, we have at the moment. But if we expand, we're going to have staff. But we get ETAs via email. That's the sort of systems I would teach on this school. Exactly how we do it, because we know in advance, and we encourage early check-ins as well. Because the more of the frenzy we can get going in the morning, the better. Whilst the housekeepers are there, so it's very, very easy. We explain it to some of the things.
You're outsourcing the laundry as well?
Laundry's outsourced.
And it's
Laundry's
self-checkout?
outsourced. So basically, there's a companies that come in. They'll take twice a week so many bags of old. It's counted and then it comes back on the Friday. So you get it's collected on a Tuesday. What they take on a Tuesday comes back on a Friday.
Well, obviously, it's not designed and not been roomed to compete with Drake's, as you've mentioned.
No.
So, what is the sort of target market for this?
That's an interesting question. Do you know what? Anybody who wants a room, anybody who wants a room, there's no predicted guest. You'd be surprised. We've had, an old couple, 65 years old, who participated in a naked bike ride, to the Lib Dem conference, to a honeymooner. With the right locations that are in cities, it's about the availability, and often, no matter how good you are, people like a change. I mean, as long as it's centrally located, the location, like with all property, is key.
Can you say more about the planning that you had to go through? I think you mentioned it was.
Yeah, it was difficult. Planning, it was difficult.
What were the challenges for you?
Well,
planning?
it's just not. It wasn't just normal planning. You've got to get you have to go through to get planning approval, but then you have conservation because it's grade 2 listed, and it's everything from the sort of there was roof tiles to the sand and cement that's used down here.
What was the planning for then? Was this for the 3 extra rooms in the basement?
3 extra rooms. Originally, I wanted to put an L shape, which was on the rear, which was totally rejected, which cost us a couple of months. But it's down to the architraves. The doors have to be special 6-panel doors, not just.
You don't have to get planning permission for a refurb.
Well, you do here when you're touching
Do
it. Yes, you do. Yeah.
Grade 2 listed.
Yeah, grade 2 listed. I've got to be very.
Well, I never.
Yeah, you do.
Which is interesting because
Particularly a guest house, Gary, which
Yeah.
is hybrid.
it makes any other refurb the walk
Yeah,
in the
I mean-
park,
So the safety
compared to what
element
it's
to it as
this.
well.
Oh yeah, you've got fire regs. You've got
Regs.
fire regs as well, which have to be approved by
Yeah.
conservation and the fire officer.
Planning, yeah.
And so there's a lot more to it. I mean, not every guest house or hotel is going to be grade 2 listed.
Yeah.
This one is. It's taken me. I've spent more than I expected.
Any other questions? Go on, Liz.
Green.
Accessibility. Where do you stand on that? I.e., your less mobile guests and all that sort of thing. You've got no lifts and all that kind of thing.
We clearly say we've got no lift and we can guarantee no floor for the rooms.
Yeah.
We have, the other thing in this method, the system I've got, would not work on large guest houses, i.e. over 12 rooms. I think 6 to 12 rooms is where this is going to. So people come into a small independent, and you've got to clearly state this up front. And if you
Yeah.
look at what I said on the website, we say we have no lifts.
Yeah.
We cannot guarantee you first or second floor rooms.
Yeah.
So, but we're still fully booked with that and without offering breakfast.
if the location is correct, can we convert a HMO into a guest house?
You'd have to go through your local. Are you talking about Hempstead?
Watford, for example.
Watford. Watford would do it, I think. But again, I'm not an expert on the planning in there, but yeah, Watford's receptive to that. Because Watford's a very good area to run this from. High demand, you know, on the M1 corridor.
Could you say a bit more about the commercial lending there? What you had to do to get the commercial lending?
Yeah.
Would it depend just on how much cash you got, or they're very interested in how the business is going to work and make money?
Both. They're gonna want your business CV, as in what you've got, your assets, liability, business plan, and you've seen Dragon's Den. It's down to you. They're going to invest in you,
Yeah.
and then they're going to take a commercial view on it. Is that business profitable? Can they get their money back? And is there enough?
Would you have, and how would you arm people that wouldn't have any experience in doing that, in doing like conversions or guest houses? Like, if I went up to a commercial lender, would the business proposition be enough, do you think?
Yeah, if you
Let's
say,
say
if you
I have
could
the-
black it a little bit, you could say that you can get builders to quote from you, so that you wouldn't need that side of it. But again, it's down to the son. I mean, do you do cash flows? You know, get that cash flow there, and double check it, and rehearse it, and pitch it.
Martin, how important is your past experience when you sit opposite a bank manager?
It's very important.
Yeah, it is very important, because I then make them my mate, which is, and you know, Gary, funny enough, Gary's got the same bank manager as me. He likes a drink, doesn't he?
Yeah, we like
yeah. So but that was coincidence. Well, I didn't really know Gary until I met him at the Lloyd's Christmas drink. This is the other thing with commercial. If you've got a few properties, you get invited to their Christmas drinks. It's you've got to know how to handle it. This is because I said earlier, when you go residential, you can go to a mortgage broker, sits you down, makes you a coffee, says, fills the form in with you, sends it off, and oh yes, you've got the mortgage. You're going to have to be confident. You're going to have to be confident, and if you're not, just rehearse and practice.
Buy another drink.
Yeah.
You're already a customer of Lloyd's, I take it?
No, I wasn't. I came down here. I mean, I had a lot of experience with commercial finance through the shops, you know, and that was basically phone them up to increase the overdraft, more shops and more stock. That was linked to my house. So if I went wrong, I lost my house.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's risking it. This is different because the loan here is a repayment loan, so it's structured nicely, and I like that. And I'm not taking so many risks as I did. When I was a retailer, I took loads of risks, and I wouldn't do it again. I'm quite cautious now.
Can you tell me a little bit more about TripAdvisor? I don't know anything about it at all, and how you get these numbers, or
TripAdvisor,
everybody's talking
well,
here.
TripAdvisor is
100 down to 33. What does it really mean? I have no idea.
Well, people post on TripAdvisor, and they will give their honest views, and they're right because they're exactly right as to how they felt they were treated or what their expectations were.
This has a big effect on the price that you can.
It can have an effect because obviously because if you're number one for a reason. You can charge more. So it's very important to be able to manipulate and look at the reviews and find out what people's expectations are, and that's what we go through in great detail on the workshop.
It's essentially a portal where people can give testimonials or otherwise on their experience of a hotel, a guest house, or holiday locations, you know. And it's really, really important because if you've got a good rating, you'll get more customers, you can charge more. If you've got a bad
Who
rating...
assesses this rating? How does it? This
the
portal company.
The customer can say, give their feedback. So
if you travel,
it's a store system.
Well, if you travel, okay, let's just say you stayed here tonight and you paid X amount. You could go to TripAdvisor and you can rate it. You can say, well, I stayed at Jury's Inn, I paid £140. I thought it was good, bad, average. you could evaluate on cleanliness, value for money, staff, forget what the other bits are. So you would give it a rating. And what this will be like a league table in the local area. So let's just, and I say in guest houses, sort of B&Bs, in Brighton there's 104 of them. So if you're 101, you are pretty bad, okay? In fact, you wouldn't want to stay there, okay?
The last place to stay.
And you got it to,
I think we've got it to 28 actually, running it like this. We're 35, and at the moment, I'm quite happy with that, because if I get it higher, it's going to exceed the people's expectations will be thinking it's better than what it is.
Yeah.
Once it's fully refurbed, we will be able to compete in the top 5.
So when people check out, you give them a special form and tell them to go there
I don't.
and do it.
No, I don't.
How many people come by? I've never done it in my
No,
life.
not everybody.
Neither
Not
have I.
everybody goes to. There's other forums as well which we go through. There's lots of other forums. TripAdvisor's is sort of the brand that most people know.
I always thought TripAdvisor was a list of local council loose paving slabs. Obviously not.
No.
Vicky.
How much you in 200,000 with this, or?
Yeah, I
Did you
mean,
manage
this
to
is
get
this
it
is
back
not
up?
this is not one of these no money down schemes, or you know, and it's not a get rich quick. You basically 70% is the maximum you're really going to get on commercial finance. So whichever your area pitches, work it on 70. You're going to have some fees in, and with me, I'm also into the refurb as well. Now, our friendly bank manager told us that Gary runs a supper club. December, he said to me, once that's valued at 800,000, we can refinance it to 500,000 locally. So basically, what am I doing? I can get my money completely back and more and refinance it.
So it's a no money down sort of deal.
Yeah, but it is. But I really I hate that no money down thing, because you've got to put money in to get it back.
Yeah.
And all you're going to do then, if it's going well, is to invest again, aren't you? You've got any sense. Just keep, skillful deals, plowing it into property.
What's the valuation formula for the end product? I mean, obviously you've got bricks and mortar, then you've got the business, haven't you? So how do they work out the value?
Oh, well, I got this value just on property.
Yeah,
'Cause
sure, but at the end, when you're saying 800.
Oh, I see. No, I'll get it valued just on property. I'll get it. That will be worth that on property. It's interesting. The business formula. If I once I'm producing that money, you're an accountant, Steve. What would you say? 2-3 times? Yeah.
That's why someone's prepared to pay for it.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, you definitely got a value once you, because I'm not going to cook the books. I'm not. This one's going to go through completely kosher. It's got to be. If you're going to produce profits, let's just say have 100, that business is going to be worth 200. The business. But as far as Lloyds are concerned, I would have that value just on the property to get that back. But it is good in terms of what is a business worth. It's exactly worth what someone's going to pay for it, given that in that time scale you're selling it.
What do you think that figure might be? If somebody came along and said, I want that guest house, I want to buy it from you.
Well, once I've got it refurbed, I mean, I don't know, I've not forward selling, but I would think at least, if I was, once I produce that at 10 to 12 per month, I'm not going to sell it for anything less than 200, just that business side.
So you got
Because otherwise I've got to do it again, haven't I?
the business, so the property's worth 800, the business is worth 200, so
Yeah.
you're saying it's worth $1 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's good, isn't it?
I would have the same track record as you if I went to a commercial lender. So are you on your course, or anyway, are you looking at joint ventures at all?
Possibly. We've said to people, anything people want to just come and have a chat with us privately.
What we've said, just out of interest on that note, we haven't come up with an upsell product from that training program. What we thought, because if we created something, people might not want it. So what we said is, what Martin suggested is, and I think it's a great idea, let's see what people want and see if we can create it. Does that make sense? Steve?
Sorry, Martin, I don't know whether you know, or the gentleman at the front there that's more or less on pensions, but is this a sort of vehicle that you could actually invest a private pension fund into being a commercial enterprise?
Yeah, we've been told it is, haven't we? We've got a commercial guy who's going to be working with us, Kevin Wright.
Kevin Wright.
And that's not, I've been told it is, but it's not my speciality, and that's why we're going to have at the workshop somebody who specialises in that. But from my interpretation of what you say is that you can't actually own it yourself. To invest, don't you have to have someone else owning it and managing it, or a limited company or something? And that's not my special forte, but we've got someone with us who's going to be able to advise on that.
You can't buy your own business.
That's right.
You can't live off the cash flow. It has to go back into the fund.
You mentioned it's only going to be suitable for, say, up to 12 rooms. If you go above that, then are you into a different
Not really,
category of hotel with different rules and regs?
Yeah. The reason I say this is that Lloyd's they're giving green light lending to small guest houses. And don't forget, these guys have got actuaries working for them. And when you get a hotel, say of 20 rooms, it's a different game, because a hotel's having to produce breakfast, cook facilities, and there's more things, as I go back to my retail days, that can go wrong. Staff, leakages. So the fact that Lloyd's and other commercial lenders are giving green light on guest houses tells me, and the way I'm running this, it works on small little units. If I had 20, let's just say I had juries in here, to get that occupancy rate, which is key for the cash flow, and you've got 200 rooms, I don't think I'd do it. I don't mean to say I would never go, but I'm not sure I'd do it. So I think the fact that all these banks are going with this. So I have no experience of that. So I think it's best to say to people, 6 to 12 rooms is probably the way to go.
Which banks are interested?
Lloyd's, Barclays were, when I was looking, that's what I know.
Aldermore.
Sorry?
Aldermore, yeah.
Yeah, Aldermore, yeah.
Just pick up on something earlier. You said that your bank manager was happy with refinance at 500 because that decision can be made locally.
Yeah.
So was your decision for your original loan made locally?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it was, okay.
Lloyd's here have a maximum local lending of 500k.
Right, okay.
And they can just write that off.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can do more, but it's going to go to the city, and that is going to take a lot longer, and there's more complications. The minute it goes upstairs there,
Yeah.
it might not happen.
That's quite an interesting.
Anybody else?
For example, if I want to convert a place in Watford and convert it into a guest house, how do I know how many guest houses are there? What, searching the website or?
Oh yeah, you need to do your due diligence and check. Be competitor active. You've got to look at your competitors. When I came down here, my reception room's based on Drake's. Okay, now Drake's is tired now, and I personally believe mine will be better in a smaller feature. But you go and stay at the best. Go and stay. And you're looking at Watford. I haven't looked at Watford. I know, obviously, I know fairly well, but go and yeah, I like the Grove. I like it. But no, go and stay at the number. Don't go and stay at the Grove because it's wasting your time because you're not going to be the Grove. You need to go to the town centre and stay in everything from a Premier Lodge, which is very active in Watford, so you see what value they're going to get, and then go to 2 or 3 independents. And certainly go to the number 1 because it's number 1 for a reason.
Premier Inn have really nailed their bit of the market.
Premier Inn's not bad.
So this number 1 thing is only in
TripAdvisor, put in hotels or guest houses Watford, and you'll have the list come up there.
That's interesting. I don't think many people would actually stay at the hotel to do the research.
No, you've got
Yeah,
it.
that's great. That's great. Any more questions for Martin? Okay, all right. Thank you. Give me a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, any thoughts about the presentation, Martin's strategy, the cash flow, the £150,000? Any thoughts? Liz?
You mentioned 5 or less than that this could work off the top of your head.
Yeah.
So talking about the fact you only want to be relevant presentations.
Yeah.
That might be the case when you take it to other locations.
Yeah, we've got 4 other speaking appointments lined up. One's in Ipswich, one's in Essex, a couple of others, one in London. So London, Manchester, Bristol, perhaps Watford, based on Martin's experience, knowledge. But yeah, it's not for every town and city in the UK, that's for sure.
But it might be just tailor it for those areas and give people like.
Sorry, look, it wouldn't work in Margate. It wouldn't work in Folkestone.
What are you talking about?
But you don't know, somebody from those areas may well want to invest in another area. You just don't know. Those sleepy old towns now, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, we're going to be here for a while. We're going to stay here until everybody goes home. Seriously, we're going to be in here. We're going to be in the bar as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to just come and ask. Martin's going to be here. This is a time to network as well. You've heard our service providers, so if you want to chat with them and have a chat. I have suggested that Vicky chats with Linda because you both got property in Wales. Yes, I'm trying to connect people already. We've had a chat already. So that'll be interesting. See what comes out of that. Just on a note, our next meeting is on the 2nd of July. I've got a very interesting speaker, a guy called Daniel Burton. He's 25 years old. He's controlling over 200 properties with what is considered to be the latest strategy at the moment. It's called rent to rent. And his cash flow is £35 per month.
35,000.
So 35.
He normally exaggerates.
£35,000 a month. Could you live off that? £35,000 a month. Sorry?
200 properties.
He's controlling 200 properties. So no deposits, no mortgages, no. It's pretty interesting. I think you need to be here for that next month. Yeah. So that's next month. If anybody wants to buy a ticket, so they don't have to pay the commission, you can pay me tonight and I'll put you on the list and you've guaranteed your seat, okay? And we'll start a list for that. Perhaps Gary, would you be kind enough to just if you want to see Gary or Will, and they'll write your name on a list and we'll take your cash tonight and you guarantee your seat. I'd like to thank you all for being here this evening. I'd like to thank Will and Gary for being on my team. They helped me out at this event, help me and Martin out at this event. Martin's my new co-host. And I'd like to thank you for doing a great presentation. The first one he's ever done, there you go. We are now on the speaking circuit. We'll let you know what we're doing, how we're doing it. If you have any questions, then please ask us, and we'll see you at the bar. Yes. Thank you.